Bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite, or whatever the case may be. My name is Marcus. I am the host of the Black Brazil Today YouTube channel, as well as the blackbraziltoday.com blog, where I analyze Brazil from the perspective of race. So this take on another take on interracial relations came across my timeline a few days ago, and the material was by a guy who I like his content on Instagram. I think his name is Mortal Borracho. I think that's his name. He has the Afro Estima Instagram page, Afro Estima, replacing the word autoestima. Autoestima in Portuguese can be translated as self-esteem. So Afro Estima, he's saying having esteem in your African ancestry, all right, or being black. He has done a long series of posts on interracial relationship, analyzing them, critiquing them, coming to a conclusion. I think he has like a course that people can take, to look more into the history of Brazil from a racial perspective in terms of, the process of whitening the country, interracial unions, etc. He has a lot of things. I've used quite a few of his posts to critique and, do reactions. And so this came across a few days ago on the popular Afro-Brazilian website known as Mundo Negro, which means Black World. So I says, okay, I wanted to see his take because it's a question that I've long asked as a person who once upon a time experimented with interracial relationships myself. I have my own opinions about this particular topic. So let's get into this. I'm going to flesh this out a little bit more as I go along. Today's material is called Why Are Black People in Interracial Relationships Criticized When They Take a Stand Against Racism? There's a view. I've always seen this in the Black American community, and increasingly it seems to be, this attitude is becoming popular, common among Black Brazilians as well. As I said before, the emergence of the internet, people didn't really question interracial unions. They just kind of looked at it as, hey, they're trying to whiten their family. It's just maybe people didn't even consciously see it that way. It was so normalized in Brazil, even after the theory of embranquecimento, this ideology that says we want to socially engineer the population of darker skinned people to have relations with lighter skin and white people so that we can produce a whiter population. This is a known fact. Brazil had its own eugenics movement going on, and there's a long history. There's been a lot of people, in the academic realm who have done dissertations and theses on the theory of embranquecimento and whitening the Brazilian population. So this isn't just that's another conspiracy theory. Like, no, I could do quite a few videos just on this idea that Brazil can only take a place on the major stage in the world when its population is whiter. This is not something that I made up. It's something that I came aware of maybe the second or third year after I started getting into the history of Brazil, right? So let's get into this video. Like I said, I'm going to expand this a little bit. I want to, delve into it a little bit deeper as I go along. So generally, when we talk about interracial relationships in Brazil, and how people are criticizing them more nowadays with the rise of Black identity politics in Brazil, I've noticed that there's like really, I've analyzed how people look at interracial relationships in Brazil according to four main topics. One is called palmitagem, this label that Black Brazilian activists came up with to describe. At that time, they was talking specifically of Black men because everywhere it seemed that they looked, the successful Black Brazilian men all seemed to have white wives, whether they were politicians, they were musicians, singers, rappers, actors, all the prominent Black men. And honestly, I wasn't aware of that until about 2004, 2005, when I saw the comments in another website that were critiquing a popular Afro-Brazilian singer. And I says, wow, I didn't know this was a thing in Brazil. I thought everybody was under the idea like, hey, we all mixed. There's no problems with that. But then I found this website where the comment section was just, going in on this particular Black singer. So it struck me then as, wow, there is a parcel of the Black population that sees interracial unions as problematic. Later on, I would say that when you analyzed when you analyze Black Brazilians, whether they're male or female, on both sides, you see a tendency to choose white partners. And so there was a pushback from Black men that says, look, it's not that Black men don't want to date Black women. It's just that Black women, if they're going to date a Black man, they want a certain level, a certain social status that this Black man has to have. If you don't have that, then they look you over. They pass you over. This is the same accusation that Black men made against Black women that Black women were making against Black men. Then you have number two, which is called embranquecimento. Again, the theory of whitening. We know about the famous painting that depicts three generations that go from a dark-skinned Black woman to a white or near white baby within 2 to 3 generations. That was the plan for Brazil that was set in motion as the country moved towards the abolition of slavery at the end of the 19th century. Then you have the so-called solidão da mulher negra, the solitude, the loneliness of the Black woman. The theory here was that among particularly Black feminists were saying it was taking Black women longer to secure long-term relationships because so many Black men would pass them over to get to the white woman. Okay. Then you have a position that people call the plundering of Black wealth, because when they look at these top name Black entertainers and just prominent Black folks, they tend to marry white, which produces mixed kids. And within the second, third, or fourth generation, the wealth that prominent Black person was able to attain gets passed right back over to the white community. So these are the four main streams of thought that I've seen when the discussion is about interracial relationships in Brazil. Now, recently, the popular singer actor Seu Jorge, I'm not going to say recently because according to this, it says this conversation went on a year ago. Seu Jorge is a popular actor and musician. He's known around the world. I'd say he's more known now as an actor than he is as a singer, but he was actually on this television program, like a roundtable discussion interview called Roda Vida, and they asked him flat out, do you only have relationships with white women? Because when you look at Seu Jorge, particularly since he's been in a spotlight for, I don't know, maybe 20 years or so, I don't think I've ever seen Seu Jorge with a Black woman. It seems like every woman you ever see him with in a relationship with, they always appear to be white. The interview was a good, I don't know, half an hour, 45 minutes long, whatever it might have been. But it was so funny to me what he said, because his answer was almost like a non-answer. I'm like, man, what do you mean by that? I'm gonna have to, do a review of that particular section of that interview one day. This next video, all these you can find on YouTube, obviously. Why Black men choose white women. This next one is from another a program, a talk show on the GNT television network, where this guy is asking, I think he's an actor, Sergio Malheiros, and he's been accused of being a palmiteiro, a Black man who prefers or only has serious relationships with white women. He's saying, palmiteiro, me? Palmiteiro is what they call Black men who seem to only want relationships, long-term relationships with white women. Intriguing interview. So let me get into the story. Why are Black people in relationships criticized when they take a stand against racism? This is a story that I actually covered. I'm not going to say I covered it, but this is something, it was kind of a question that I asked a few years ago. I'm going to get to that in a minute. But let me get into the article by Moro Borracho. So he says, talking about interracial relationships on social media is always a delicate topic. This is a subject that mobilizes various feelings in people, especially Black people. Among these feelings is the indignation directed at those Black people who take a stand against racism while being in an interracial relationship. So we have to ask ourselves, do Black people who are in interracial relationships lose their legitimacy by taking a stand against racism? Before answering this question, we need to analyze the probable reasons for this criticism. I understand that many people believe that a Black person with some critical awareness of race who chooses to be in a relationship with a white person is incoherent when taking a stand against racism. This is because he or she would supposedly have chosen to live alongside his or her oppressor rather than a fellow human being. This is a question that, as I've said, the fact that I dated interracially years ago, and then I came across another position in my life where I just didn't feel like dating outside of Black women was something that I wanted to do anymore. I have a number of friends who are also in long-term relationships with white women. we had discussions about race all the time. It's not, I can't like dismiss somebody because they have a white partner as if they don't have any interest in black issues anymore. I mean, looking at the criticism, like he said, it's a delicate issue because we can't just do a broad brushstroke and say that everybody who's in an interracial relationship is, suddenly no longer black. They don't care about black issues because it's so individual. You could run into people who have no connection with the black community. They don't choose, they don't want it, they don't think about race. That's one thing. Then you have people who have been advocates for black people for a long time. They still are immersed in black issues, but they were never able to find another black person who they could click with. And that does happen. That's something that we can't dismiss here. Um, one of my friends, matter of fact, a few of my friends have asked me to like, dude, they were almost asking like, dog, would you like revoke my black card if I got with a white girl? Because it's like, man, I've tried and I've tried, but the black women that are available to these days just aren't the type of women that I can click with. They're not into the things that I'm into. Um, if I want to be in a long-term relationship, I've tried, people will say I'm in my 40s, I'm in my 50s now, and I've dated just numerous black women, but they're just none of them are where I am, and why does it seem when I go out with a white girl, I can click easier? That's a whole nother topic, but it can't be dismissed. It's hard enough to find a person that you click with without narrowing it down to a single race. I mean, that's why I said I can't dismiss anybody's views or the choices that they make because each choice is individual. I can't just dismiss all. I do question it. When I became aware of this issue in Brazil, and it seemed like I saw about 90, literally 90 to 95% of the top soccer stars, the top musicians, rappers, singers, actors, the politicians. It just seemed every time I saw a prominent black man, they were with a white partner. I was questioning, like, wow, until somebody brought that to my attention, I hadn't noticed it. But then when I looked at the other side, I says, well, you got black Brazilian women who do the same thing. And the excuse is always, well, black men don't want us, so I got to open up my dating options. But as many people have argued in terms of the Brazilian situation, you can't just think that white supremacy or the theory of whitening in Brazil only affected black men and didn't affect black women. If you go back to the 19th century and the early part of the 20th century, most black men didn't have access to white women. So the interracial marriages and interracial unions and production of children that was going was mostly because of black women at that time. That's another topic to bring out maybe in the future, but I just want to give a more balanced, nuanced view of this question. So in 2014, this was an article I did where I said, why does it seem like all the black soccer players who denounce their experiences with racism always seem to have white wives? This was the article back in 2014. And at that time, there were a number of prominent black soccer players. This guy Aroca and this guy Chinga right here. They both made headlines for dealing with the racism they were experiencing on the soccer field, off the soccer field, people making monkey chants at them, calling them, making monkey sounds, calling them macaco, which means monkey. There was the famous incident. This is the soccer star Marcelo and his wife and child. You had the goalie Aranha. He became like, it was a big story when this fan in the audience at one of the soccer games from the opposing team called him, she was caught on tape calling him a macaco. And it became a big story for several months and years. And then you get to see Aranha's family, and yeah, this guy was married to a white girl also. And it's like, that's intriguing. Why does it seem like all the black soccer players who experience racism or call out racism, you go home and you always see them with white partners? It is what it is, but I just thought it was like, what's going on with that? This is the Brazil's first black president of the Supreme Court. Like, he's the head. He stepped down some years ago, but Joaquim Barbosa, and this question was asked in this article where a white journalist was asking a question: why is it that most prominent black men seem to be with white women? So, before somebody just says, oh, because Brazilians are famous, they're notorious for calling Americans racist, but then they don't see the type of racism that they practice in their own country. So another reason may be linked to the tiredness of seeing the rich black man with a white spouse, as I was just talking about, a phenomenon that's repeated over and over again. People create expectations about who they admire. And one of these expectations is that the person they admire will choose to have a relationship with someone who looks like them for obvious and significant reasons. There are also some more sectarian groups who see these people as traidores da raça, meaning race traitors. The latter are linked to an ideological line of essentialization of the black person. In other words, to be a negro de verdade, or a real black person, black person who's keeping it real, you would say. The person must think, dress, pray, have relationships in the way they understand to be within a label of blackness. I remember a few years ago, a friend of mine and I, we used to check out this Facebook page, a Brazilian Facebook page. I think it was called Quilomboshi. And every day on that particular Facebook page, they would just criticize any new black Brazilian or famous person that came along and found out that they had a white partner, and they would all just go in on that person. I was like, wow, this is intriguing. I was happy to see that at least the question was being asked, but I also agree that just attacking people publicly, this is not going to solve the problem. This is not going to address the issue. When people choose what they choose, it's upon that person to be able to do a self-reflection. I had a guy that I knew in Sao Paulo when I was still living there, and I would have these discussions with him. He was a black man, and he was like the director of a publicity firm. And I remember having a conversation with him, and I had invited him to a birthday party for my kids, and he had told his wife about me, and all the conversations we would have. And he said that his wife was a little bit afraid to meet me, like, oh, well, he's not going to like me because I'm married to you. And I'm like, I'm not going to criticize people in their face. I'm not going to make people uncomfortable. Bring your wife. I don't have a problem with that. Just having a discussion does not mean I'm going to criticize somebody publicly or, in their face. I see a lot of people coming on the YouTube page and saying, Brazil is never going to be the United States, leave us alone, leave us out of politics or whatever. And I'm saying, I'm not here to criticize, but it's not a problem that we should be able to have an open discussion about why this seems to be the norm in Brazil. Why is it a problem having a discussion when we know that there's a history that says we need to whiten the population? Brazil made it political when they came up with the theory of whitening that says we want to whiten the population until all black and brown skinned people disappear. So I'm not the person who originally politicized this issue. You want to find out who did that? Go back to the Brazilian elites of the late 19th century. So here's another video right here. There is prejudice between black men with white women. A black man with a white woman is a palmiteiro. That's what he's asking in that video. Failure to comply with any of these requirements means that the black person is considered whitened or whitewashed. All of us have probably identified with one of these feelings at some point, but I once read a sentence in a book that said we shouldn't see people where they should be, but where they are. And this was fundamental in making me rethink many things. There's another video here on palmitagem. You click on that, you use that term, you'll find just probably hundreds of videos on YouTube. To say that a black person can't fight racism, denounce it, take a stand against it because they are in an interracial relationship doesn't make any sense. A person in a relationship with a white person doesn't become whiter, doesn't become deracialized. Therefore, they remain victims of the same racism that affects those who are not in interracial relationships. We as black people can be affectionately linked to white people, and this doesn't necessarily have to be in an effective sexual relationship. We can have white family members, white friends, and white colleagues. Interraciality goes beyond marriage and dating, although these are more often explored, and it can't be a reason for withdrawing someone's carteirinha de negro or black card. A few more videos talking about palmitagem. Here it says we need to talk about palmitagem, our opinion about palmitagem, black masculinity in palmitagem. Is it a hypocrisy? Hundreds of videos on palmitagem, if you can understand Portuguese. I once wrote that saying there is no racism because blacks and whites have relationships would be like saying there's no racism because men and women have relationships. I remember the author, Edward Telles, said this in his book about race and color in Brazil some years ago. Maybe that's where he got that. I'm not sure. Well, I understand that saying that a black person can't take a stand against racism because they are in a relationship with a white person is like saying that many women can't stand up against sexism because they're in a relationship with men. We can have the idea that black people who are in interracial relationships don't know the problems this can involve. They know, they probably blame themselves for it, they feel bad. In fact, society reminds them every day that they are in a stigmatized relationship. This type of relationship can heighten the racial awareness of black people as they may be more exposed to racism from white friends and family. I remember the first time I dated a white girl, this was some years ago, and I just remember the girl's stepfather was just he was a blatant racist. I mean, she would tell me some of the things that he would say when I wasn't around, just crazy stuff. But what's funny is that I was with her for a few years, and before we ended up breaking up, me and this stepfather were actually going hanging out together. We were going to Lions football games. I'll never forget that. Like, somebody asked him, like, well, you say all of these bad things about black people, but what about Marcus? He says, oh, well, Marcus isn't black. He's Marcus. So it kind of harks back to what people say. It's like when some white people run into a black person that don't fit the stereotype that they have of that person, they're no longer like really black. They look at them as an individual rather than a representative of the black race, right? They don't know any black people, so they judge the black population based on the one person they know or have interactions with. So in his eyes, I'm just a regular person because I don't fit the stereotype of the other N words that they were familiar with or were stereotyped on television, right? So anyway, so I can definitely relate to that, being exposed to the racism from white friends and family. Okay. This is a discussion that won't end here, but perhaps we can think of more purposeful ways of dealing with this issue. Well, what do you think? Definitely agree. That's something that's why I like to talk about this issue because it is a big issue that black people are discussing in Brazil these days. You see this video here. Então, os negão só curte mulher branca. You can see this is from the popular movie White Chicks, with say translated as branquelas in Brazil, really popular movie in Brazil also. So before I go, I do want to take a look at a couple of other links that I put up here just to show you just this is a very popular topic. It continues ongoing in Brazil. You go to YouTube and you punch in the term solidão da mulher negra, meaning the loneliness or the solitude of black women, and you'll find perhaps hundreds of videos under this title, black women discussing why they can't seem to get long-term relationships, right? You can also search for the term palmitagem. A lot of discussion going on about palmitagem. Black men and black women continue to throw, darts at each other over who's the real palmiteiro. Hundreds of videos on that topic. What else we have here? Then you have this particular article, and I've seen more than a few, palmitagem e a pilhagem da herança negra, being the palmitagem and the plundering of the black legacy. This is I did a video about this. This is a famed musician, Gilberto Gil, and you see a lot of his family, if they're not white, they're mestizos. They seem to be in the process of whitening. And in the end, when he passes on, all of that wealth will be distributed among people who are in the process of whitening their families. Thus, Gilberto Gil's legacy will be left in the hands of people who are considered white in Brazil. Then you have questions about embranquecimento, which means whitening. Again, this isn't something that I created. The theory of embranquecimento, the whitening theory, the project of whitening in Brazil is very real. Elites, over 100, 150 years ago came up with the idea of the solution of the black race in Brazil is to mix them until they become white or something close to white, right? This is the famous painting that I've referred to numerous times on this channel. The progression of 3 generations from, let me see if this picture comes back up, the dark-skinned black woman at the left, her mixed daughter in the middle, the Portuguese immigrant on the right, and the white or near white grandchild in the mixed daughter's arms, saying like mission accomplished. The family was whitened after about 3 generations. So anyway, let me see, is there anything else here? You go to the blog Black Brazil Today, you'll find a whole lot of articles on palmitagem as well as the loneliness of black women. All of these issues that I discussed in this video, you can find on the blackbraziltoday.com blog. Okay. it's a topic that I never get tired of reading about, because Black Brazilians, once they come to understand that they were socially engineered to prefer whiteness, they started having open discussions about this topic. So anyway, I'm going to leave this video here. Curious to know what you thought. Should Black people who are in relationships with white people be dismissed in terms of exposing racism or speaking out against racism, or do their voices not count anymore? Or should they be given an open space to be able to discuss what they think is true, their opinion of how race works in Brazil? Should they be dismissed, or should people consider their opinions as well? What do you think? Drop a comment in the comment section. Like this video, share this video. Consider subscribing to this channel if you've seen more than a few videos that you liked. Click on that notification bell so that you know when I post a new video. If you like this video and others, consider tipping me in the proportion that you like this video, or send me a super chat, because I'll tell you, a lot of my videos get demonetized by YouTube, because apparently I've broken some guideline for the videos, but I think my videos are very important. I think they're bringing discussion to Americans and other people outside of Brazil who may not know the racial situation in Brazil. So, just if you feel like you would like to leave a tip, I'm not asking you to break the bank or anything, but I appreciate any donations you want to make in a super thanks, or at my Cash App profile, which is got the $ Mr. Marcus 72 MRMARQUES 72. And with that said, I am going to end this video and invite you all to come out to check out the next video that I post.